When is a parent born? When your world changes in a moment? Nani? Or when the moment is celebrated by all? When you start learning again? Or with a new role? Is it your child's first breath? Or is it just a feeling? Parents are born when they fulfill a responsibility.
Your child's umbilical cord blood can provide protection from 80 life-threatening diseases. Keep it safe with Asia's largest stem cell bank. Cord Life. One chance, one choice.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Dr. Ushma Bujani, and I welcome all of you today for a very lovely session on diet and labor management during pregnancy. Before I move ahead, first of all, congratulations to all of you for this pregnancy. And I think it's one of the best time to be pregnant, right? COVID, you at least get your partner to be with you, and if you work from home, even better. That whatever I'm going to tell you today, probably you will be able to follow a little bit better, right? Before I move ahead to our today's session, just a basic brief of who I am. So basically, I'm a practicing physiotherapist. I have been practicing in this field since last 11 years, and I super specialize in women's health. There are very few people in India who super specialize in pelvic floor rehabilitation in females. So what is pelvic floor rehabilitation we'll be talking about today in the session. That's why I'm mentioning about it. As well as I have done my PGD in diet and nutrition. I have done my other super specialization in spine, aqua workouts and everything over a period of time. And my core speciality of doing these sessions or dealing with pregnancy is that I love to, treat people as a whole. So I don't treat one part of a person. Okay, you are pregnant, you have this pain, that's all. It has to be a very comprehensive thing. And I think that's something which is really lacking when it comes to preventive care in India. And that's the reason that I did my specialization so far like this. And I'm very happy to talk to you all today in this prenatal session because I'm not sure that for you all prenatal session is the first time or you all have attended other sessions. But for the ones who are attending it for the first time, what is this concept? What is prenatal session? Right. So prenatal session is something, where we all gather together and we talk on any one small particular topic in detail. So you all must have experienced, right, that since the time you all got pregnant, any person you know or you don't know will come down and give you some tips, right? Sometimes the tips are helpful and sometimes they are confusing. In fact, at the time they all are contradicting and you don't really remember that you're not very sure that where and how to go about. Then you decide, let me go to my doctor. So when is my next visit scheduled? And that day you decide, I'll ask these 5 questions and I'll come back. You go to your doctor, you meet, you finish your routine checkup, you walk out of the clinic and you realize, oh, I forgot asking my 5 questions. And then again you start going to your relatives and start asking that questions and it's still a little vague. So in order to take you out of this confusion and so that you get an answer which is very logical, scientific and research based, we created a platform which is called as a prenatal session where we can answer your that questions which we normally forget asking the doctors. At the same time, if any confusion created by so many tips and care given by the care providers, right? So for today's topic that I would want to talk to you all about are 2 things. One is nutrition during pregnancy and second is labor management. The truth is both the topics are really broad spectrum, but I'll make sure that I'll give you few simple takeaways that will make your both sail smooth throughout your pregnancy, right? So coming to the first topic, I'm pretty sure that all of us during pregnancy has this concern that, okay, am I getting proper nutrition or not during my pregnancy? There are extreme variations, usually every trimester has its own challenges. First trimester, most of us experience nausea, vomiting, and we feel, oh my God, I'm not eating adequate, I'm not gaining weight, or I'm losing weight. And is my baby growing properly or not? By second trimester, you are like in a good place, where you started eating, you're okay, you're slowly gaining weight. By third trimester, again, it's a little uneasy phase, where you want to eat, but you can't eat. The gastric discomfort really irritates you. And in all the phases, still the question remains that, okay, am I getting proper nutrition or not? Is my baby growing well or not? Right. So this is one of my favorite topic, Why? Because I think we most commonly end up confusing our nutrition with our weight gain. Right. So I've seen people who gain really good amount of weight, 15, 20 kgs in their pregnancy, end up thinking, okay, my baby is very healthy. And females who end up gaining 5 kg, 7 kg, or who have difficulty gaining weight, they are throughout in that 9 months in that tension that, okay, is my baby growing well or not? So the biggest question to all of you that is it true that your weight gain is directly proportional to your baby's health and your health? So as I'm really missing all of your answers, but I'll give you the answer. So answer is no. Your weight gain is not directly proportional to your weight nutrition. It is not directly proportional to your child's health, right? Now you'll be wondering, is it? Then how do I know that my child is growing properly or not? So the best way to know that your child is growing properly or not is usually your regular sonographies, right? Second thing is your abdominal girth. That will also increase. Again, abdominal girth is one more place where people feel that too big abdomen means, okay, my baby is very plumpy and healthy, and very small abdomen means, oh, my baby is not growing healthy. Again, these two are very irrelevant things. Too big of a baby bump is most of the time a credit of high fats in the abdomen area. It does not mean that the baby is going to be delivered is going to be 4 kg. At the same time, if the baby bump is very small, depending on 7 months, 8 months, 9 months, and still the baby bump is just adequate, and people walking in will tell you, oh, you are 9 months pregnant, you just look 6 months, go show to the doctor, is everything okay or not? In this time, your baby is absolutely okay. As far as your sonography, as far as your kicks, everything is going fine. It is just that your abdominal fat is less and you're much more fitter, and that is the reason the bump is of an adequate size. So the first thing that I want all of you to take away from here is that your weight is not directly proportional to your baby's health, and your baby bump is also not directly proportional to your baby's weight. Right. Now coming to that thing, if you're talking only about weight, let me just finish one more important topic, which is that, okay, if the weight is not directly proportional, then how much weight gain should I have during my pregnancy? So weight gain, we always prefer talking on. It's not only because of your health or the baby's health, but the major reason is that, as I said, I love to deal with people very comprehensively. So what we need to see is that how is maternal health or a mother's health after she delivers, which is very important, right? If the maternal health is compromised, even gaining weight, but the nutrition is not good, strength is not good, feels aches and pains here and there, and she delivers, it's going to be a difficult journey afterwards, right? So weight gain is an important criteria. We do want to gain a healthy amount of weight. We don't want to overdo it and we don't want to underdo it, because these two aspects majorly affects mother's health and not the baby's health. And our absolute motto or our absolute goal of all this session is to achieve both. It's healthy mother and the healthy baby, right? It cannot be just any one of it. So coming to the most important question, that how much weight gain is good weight gain, right? So for that, we'll do a small exercise, okay? What I want all of you, so, okay, normally I prefer asking this question where people reply and people have a standard norm in their head. Okay, I gain 10 to 12 kgs is normal, or someone says gaining 8 to 10 kgs is normal. So the normal weight gain is as per your height and your size when you conceived. So depending on what was your weight before you became pregnant and what is your height decides how much weight you should gain. There is no standard norm per se that says ki, yeah, this much amount is ideal. It is very subjective thing. Okay. So we'll do a small exercise for this. What I want all of you to do is, you all know your height, right? What I want you to do is I want you to convert your height from feet into centimeters. So for example, if you're 5 feet, then your height is 150 centimeters. Now after 5 feet, every inch I would want you to add 2.5 centimeters. right? So I want all of you to, 2.5 to 3 centimeters approximately, you can start adding as per an inch. So for example, if you're 5'3", then your height would be 159 or 160 centimeters, right? So approximately, I want you to convert your height from feet into centimeters. Take 10 seconds and quickly do that, right? Did you all get a 3-digit number? Like I said, 150, 160, we all got that number? Right. Now what I want you to do is, I want you to subtract or minus 100 centimeters out of this. So minus the 100 out of that 3-digit. You will come across 2-digit number. So for example, let's take that my height is 160 centimeters. Okay. If I minus 100, it comes to 60 kgs. Now for me, for my height, an approximate ideal weight is 2 kg plus and minus of 60. So my bracket will become 58 kg to 62 kg as ideal weight as per my height. Now, if I start my pregnancy between 58 to 62, then I can gain 10 to 12 kgs throughout the pregnancy, because I have started with a healthy weight as per my height, right? Now, for example, my ideal weight bracket is 58 to 62, but I started my pregnancy at 45 kgs, so I'm quite underweight. In this situation, I can actually gain weight anywhere between 15 to 20 kgs. Okay, and it's absolutely fine. It's just that when you are into weight gaining patterns, we don't really know how to gain because our body is not used to gaining weight. It's always good to opt for a healthy fat option rather than going ahead with a junk food just for the sake of gaining weight, right? Second option is that ideal weight bracket is 58 to 62 for me, right? And I started my pregnancy, say, at 70, 75 kgs. So in this situation, I am overweight compared to what my height and weight ratio is. In this situation, I can gain anywhere between 5 to 8 kgs, and even that is absolutely normal, right? We have had patients for whom, a weight bracket was around 70 to 75, and they were 100, 105 kgs when they started their pregnancy. In such cases, even they gained only 2 kg or 3 kg throughout their pregnancy, and it went absolutely smooth and fine, delivered a healthy baby, delivered it normally without any complication. So the question comes, oh, okay, so if I'm overweight and I gain only this much weight, how will my baby grow? So your baby is growing. Your amniotic sac ka weight is coming up. Your amniotic fluid ka weight is coming up. But at the same time, your body is losing fats. So that's why on the scale, if you see, you don't see too much of weight gain if you follow a good nutritional pattern, but your baby grows very well. So particularly if you are struggling with losing weight, this is the best phase to do that, right? You just have to follow a religious, good, nutritional pattern, and weight loss becomes really automatic and very fast in this phase. Okay, so I hope I've answered the question to you all that, how much weight should I gain during pregnancy? Now the question comes, the second question that very commonly people end up asking me is that, okay, now if I'm pregnant, it's okay, right? I'm supposed to eat for 2. And then half of them are like, no, I know I'm not supposed to eat for 2. Because my baby is just this much at the initial phase, gradually growing up, and only at the 3rd trimester, the baby size becomes like really big. And in neither of the circumstances is my baby really eating food in my stomach, right? Baby is just growing with help of the blood supply. So am I supposed to eat for 2? So the answer is no, you're not supposed to eat for 2. But I feel very hungry. That's the most common thing I come across, that yeah, I understand I'm not supposed to eat for 2. Feel so hungry. What to do? So here comes the main answer, is that how to work on your nutritional chart, that you get good amount of nutrition without ending up eating for 2 and without gaining unnecessary weight, or if need be, then gaining the weight that your body requires to, right? So the main thing that comes across is understanding the basic 5 components of food. Okay, so in this, it's, if you go across, a lot of people will start talking about individual nutrition, individual diet charts, but they're very subjective thing. You can't follow that throughout the 9 months. So I'll give you a simple trick. We all know the 5 major macronutrients or major nutrients of our body. What I want you to do is, I'll explain you how to go ahead from start to evening, right? Now, for example, most of us, first thing that we all do in morning is, we start with any kind of beverage. Now, we don't want to start with any kind of beverages. Now, I'll start covering individual aspects of it as well. Okay, so for example, if you're in your 1st trimester, and you know that you won't, or even a lot of people have it in second trimester as well, that you know you have a lot of acidity, you know you have a lot of acid reflux, you know that you get morning sick, and as soon as you go to brush and you end up puking, or you know the whole day you have this fear that I'll eat and I'll feel nauseous. This all starts usually from morning. Okay, so in during pregnancy, our body has a hormone in our body which is called as HCG. Now, HCG is the test that we do when we get pregnant, right? Now, this hormone titers increases so quickly in our body that most of the females find difficult to acclimatize with this much increase in hormone. So that is the reason that they feel very nauseous, or they feel very, they sometimes end up, vomiting, or they feel a lot of acid during this phase. So in this situation, if we are used to doing pre-pregnancy, that as soon as I get up, first thing I do is either brush, I take care of my whole family. I feed my husband. I see my, if I have another child, then I look after the child, in-laws. Now everyone goes away. Then after 1.5 hour, 2 hours later, I sit down with a cup of tea or coffee or milk. You realize, right? So we already have an overnight fasting with so much of acidity in our stomach, and we have started with tea, coffee, and milk, and that too after 1.5 hour of waking up. So the rule goes starts from midnight. If you have acidity, vomiting, nausea, make sure that midnights, whenever you wake up for your washroom visits, you keep a simple dry snack at your table. Okay. Now this dry snack could be a rusk, it could be some nuts, it could even be some sukha chana. Just eat a little bit. It can even be a threatened biscuit. Just eat a little bit, drink a little water, and go to sleep. I know it's a little inconvenient to eat midnights, but that will really help your morning, and it will cut down your morning sickness. It's called morning sickness because of that reason, because we starve whole night, and that acid buildup and the morning tea, coffee really takes it over the head, right? So that will help you with your nauseous phase. Apart from that, everyone, irrespective of which phase of pregnancy you are, as soon as you all wake up, you should eat something before you start, taking care of people's needs, or even your needs, or you start cooking, or you get into some other work. So first thing your side table should have is something for you to eat in morning. Now that can again be a very dry snack, because that is something that will absorb the acidity. As soon as you are done with that, you can, if you are on your thyroid medication or something, then that's the first thing you have. But if you're not on any medication, start with a dry snack. After that, give yourself, depending on the need, make sure that within first 45 minutes to an hour after you wake, you have your breakfast. You cannot drag your breakfast. If you wake up at 7, then you have your breakfast at 10, 10:30. It's going to create a lot of imbalance in the body, right? That is also one of the reasons you feel very tired and draggy also during pregnancy, because your body needs continuous fueling. So your breakfast should come within 45 minutes to an hour of your waking up, right? After that, the simplest way to move forward is to make sure that you at least have something every 2 to 3 hourly. Right? Now, before we go to 2 to 3 hourly mid breaks, we will first talk about our three main meals. Now, which are our three main meals? The first is our breakfast, that comes 45 minutes to an hour after we get picking up. Second is the lunch, and third is the dinner. Now, whenever we're talking about these three main meals, we need to take care of five major nutrients, macronutrients that we were talking about. So, which are they? First is your carbohydrates that we all know about, right? Where do we get our carbohydrates from? So all our rotis, breads, your all potatoes, rice, this all are carb portions, right? Second is protein. Where do we get our protein from? So milk, curd, buttermilk, paneer, cheese, soya at times. These all are very useful. Even your dals, even your chicken or your fishes, these are again very rich sources of your protein. Third aspect of it is fats. Now, a lot of people end up, chucking out fats, or they end up getting overindulged into fats during pregnancy. Either of this are not a very healthy option. It is not a very great idea to, rule out fat completely. That, oh, I don't eat anything fat-based, but I don't want to gain weight during pregnancy. And it's again a very unhealthy option, where we end up saying, oh, I'm pregnant, I can start with Shira, and then I can have my food and then have some halwa with it, or oh, you're pregnant, acha, dal mein ek aur chammach ghee dal ke kha lo. This all are again overindulgence. So it's better to keep a little balance. It's always better to opt for ghee over oils. Again, if you're opting for oils, it's best option to opt for, options where oil really comes from. So I've seen, lately market is full of rice bran oil, safflower oil. And sometimes, I really wonder that if you really take a rice bran and put it into a machine, really oil comes out. right? So it's always better to go with a simple options where you know that oil really comes out of. So your coconut oils, your peanut oil, your olive oils, these are really rich source. Even your sarson ka oils are very rich sources of nutrition. They again come into a good source of fat if had in moderation. So you can indulge into it, not a problem. If you know that you don't want to overgain your weight, it is always good to stick with 2 spoons throughout the day, not more than that. Now, how you divide it, that's your choice, right? Now, but the fats are important because fats will help in assimilating your proteins and your carbs, and it will make sure, that you don't feel very draggy. So don't rule out your fats completely, right? Apart from that, the another thing is obviously your salt and sugars and your other micronutrients. So salt and sugar, again, in appropriate proportions are absolutely fine. And a lot of people who end up asking me, is honey better? Is jaggery better? Everything is the same. Okay, they are just a little bit, marginally different from each other. If had in moderation, you can have any of this option and they all are good. And anything in overindulgence or underindulgence is obviously going to be a problem, right? Particularly salt. Now, salt is something that really needs to be taken care of because maximum of the females end up having a lot of leg swelling or water retention during the pregnancy. Now, why am I talking about this 5 nutrients? I'm pretty sure that in an Indian setup of eating, carbs is always taken care of, fats is always taken care of, even salt and sugars are also taken care of. The major nutrient which ends up missing drastically is protein. Now, if you don't end up having appropriate amount of protein, first thing happens is your body starts retaining water. Why does that happen? Because your cells needs protein in order to retain water. If you don't have protein, your cells will start losing that water. So you will start having extra, मतलब cell के बाहर वाला water. That's the reason वो पैर लटकते हैं तो सूज जाते हैं, हाथ सूज जाते हैं, face सूज जाता है. This all is very commonly seen, right? Now the question comes is that, okay, if I will not have protein adequately, I know that my body will retain water. I know another one more thing, that's very commonly that happens if you don't have your adequate protein is low hemoglobin. Again, very, very common. So, I don't know you all have noticed or not, but do check in your files, okay? The first time when you go to your obstetrician and he says कि चलो आप CBC कराओ, आपका hemoglobin for example 12, 11, 13 है something, and then next time your obstetrician will tell you to do फिर से CBC at 6 months of your pregnancy, and you will see you will be already 2 to 3 drops down, 2 to 3 counts down. And that's very universally for all the females, okay, until unless their nutrition is excellently managed. So in this case, why does hemoglobin goes down? Well, already body's requirement is high, first thing. Second thing is that again protein intake is not that great. Now why again protein for hemoglobin? So protein for hemoglobin because your hemoglobin is not only iron, it's heme plus globin. So your heme is iron, but your globin is protein. You keep on popping iron pills, but your nutrition doesn't contain protein, it's never going to end up coming into a hemoglobin pattern. And that is the reason that a lot of time, even if we are put on iron medications, the hemoglobin does not go up, and iron drips, blood drips and hemoglobin drips are to be given to you all after 7 months of the pregnancy, right? So we really need to take care of our hemoglobin levels. Again, that contributes a lot to, how energetic you feel, how breathless you feel during your pregnancy. Feeling breathless between 27 to 32 weeks is very normal because the baby size is all the way here. But if you start feeling breathless at 20 weeks, 15 weeks, this all are again sign of poor nutritional status, right? So another thing, hemoglobin is really important when we go into labor. Because during labor, we end up losing anywhere around 500 ml of blood, right? And if we are already starting at 10 and 11, we lose some 500 blood and we come to 9 and 10 or somewhere 8. Now imagine we start at 9, right? So we cannot drop below 10 or 9, depending on our basic health condition. So that much is minimum amount we need to maintain. An ideal amount is anywhere between 12 to 14. So I really want you all to focus on your protein aspect. Now, why am I talking about this is that your 3 main meals should comprise of 3 components. It cannot be only carbs and fats. So most commonly when I end up asking people, what do you eat for your breakfast? The most common answer I get is poha, upma, sandwich, and it gets topped, paratha. So see, there are methods with which you can make this a little high protein. I'll give you the tricks for it. Okay. Now, for example, you're making poha. Now poha is only carbs, कुछ नहीं है उसके अंदर, बराबर? So what you can do is that once the poha is cooked halfway, put half of the sprouts in it, and then make it. Make sure you cook the sprouts as well a bit. You don't just have it raw, otherwise it will give you a gastric discomfort if you're sensitive to it. But if you make poha with half sprouts, it becomes good carbohydrates, proteins, and fat component. Same way, if you are getting up and you are having dosa, instead of having a traditional dosa, try having mixed dal ka dosa, try having moong dal ka dosa, try having nachni dosa. So try changing the ingredients every day because every ingredient has its own nutrition. It's not like ये अच्छा है ये बुरा है, कुछ भी बुरा नहीं है खाने में. Okay, everything is good and it's made for the body, but it needs to keep on altering, and it cannot be just poha and atta, gehu ka atta, right? It has to be mix of all attas because every atta has more fiber content. It has more nutritional content than just gehu ka atta. It might taste a little dry. You can always top it up with some vegetables and dal and all, but it will be much more lighter on your digestive system. It will take a little longer to digest. So it will give you better satiety. So that typical feeling that मुझे बहुत भूख लगती है, I can't finish my meal in 2 rotis. That problem gets solved. Right. Third aspect of it is that, for example, so I give you nashte ka option. Again, if you're just having bread, toast or sandwich, try having 2 egg whites with it. If you're a vegetarian, you're having a sandwich, make a paneer sandwich. Or if you're having a vegetable sandwich, just then try to have a cup of yogurt with it. But in very simple ways, but make sure that your 3 meals when you have it should have carbs, proteins and fats, and it cannot be only carbs and fats, right? Coming to the next other 2 meals. The second meal of the lunch is mostly good for everyone, right? It's roti, sabji, dal, chawal is the most common thing we all do. Having roti and chawal together are not in generally a very good option, okay? Because they make you full very fast and it increases your sugar levels quite high. And your insulin usually doesn't end up matching that much, So if that really happens, it creates an imbalance in the body. Again, very, very, very important for people who have pregnancy-induced diabetes. If you have that, make sure you don't have your rotis and chawals together. If you don't have that, still try to opt to keep them separate. So keep your nights for your rice and chawal because they have they go on for a longer time. So they'll give you more satiety and more energy throughout the night. Whereas your rotis and all will help you to munch in the mid meals when I said 2 to 3 hours. So keep your lunch usually roti, sabzi, dal. You can have buttermilk with it, and most importantly, a bowl of salad. If you have a bowl of salad, and bowl of salad is supposed to be you're supposed to have it always pre-meals. Don't have it with the meal. It will again give you gastric discomfort. So खाने के पहले have 1 bowl of salad. Again, during pregnancy, avoid eating things which are raw because that might end up giving you some kind of distress, gastric distress, infections. So it's always good to toss it, So toss it in olive oil a little bit, put a little spices, try to use as many colors as possible. So this vegetable zone is the only zone through which you will get your micronutrients, right? So that micronutrients will only come with color. So whenever I tell people have salad, they tell me kakdi tomato. So kakdi tomato alone cannot come into salad. It has to have some other colors. It has to have carrots. It can have beetroot if you don't have diabetes. Have different colors of bell peppers. Have a little broccoli if you do not have thyroid. Again, if you have thyroid, avoid broccoli, gobi, and all that things. But apart from that, you all can have that. Have some different colors of zucchini. So as many colors as you add, you will start having that satiety that your body needs. So start with that. Then 2 rotis will definitely suffice. Okay, so have your 2 rotis, have good proportion of sabzi and good proportion of dal, and if need be, then buttermilk. Once you're done with that meal, then comes the mid meal. There are 2 meals almost that comes in evening, right? Now, these are the times when you can opt for, it depends upon how hungry you are. But out of the 2 mid meals, one before dinner wala meal is always favorite is to have vegetable soup. Right? Because it's very difficult to eat salad every day in that quantity. So for example, souping and juicing, a lot of people who end up drinking fruit juices. Fruits are to be eaten and vegetables are supposed to be juiced because we need vegetables in this much quantity. When we juice it, this much quantity comes in one, right? But we need fruit only one. And if we juice it, we end up eating 5, 5, 6, 6 of it. And we throw away the most important aspect of it is with its fiber, right? So no juicing your fruits. You can eat one in morning or whenever you feel like. And you need to soup your vegetables in evening. Apart from that, evening 5 o'clock time is usually, I prefer it as an indulgence time. So you can have a sukha base, idli, something from your morning ka nashta, anything is fine, but make sure you eat a little. If you don't feel very hungry, you can even opt for a glass of buttermilk, right? Now coming to your dinners. Now dinners are usually a fancier option. People don't like to eat roti sabzi. So this is the time, again, make sure that you see the three aspects of it, and then you will be, really rocking the idea of nutrition. So for example, you feel like eating pizza. You're like, can I eat pizza? Can I eat pasta? Yes, pasta is a very good option. So pasta mein your whole wheat pasta becomes your carbs. Add a little paneer to it, add a little cheese to it, your protein comes into it. Make sure you make it in red sauce and not in white sauce so you do not gain too much of weight. And make sure you put a lot of vegetables, a lot of gravy, and less of pasta, and it's balanced. Same way, it goes ahead with your pizza. Try to use a whole wheat or a multigrain base, or even my favorite is I have to use multigrain roti, and then I make my pizza on it, and then I prefer putting a little bit of, if you are non-vegetarian, you can put a little chicken, or you can put a little mushroom, or you can put a little paneer. This all will again, provide you a good source of nutrition along with vegetables, a little bit of cheese, and your taste has been taken care of as well as your nutrition has been taken care of, right? If not, then roti sabzi, khichdi, this all are again a very healthier option. Depending on how much you are able to eat during your pregnancy, you need to select, right? But if you will make sure you need these three ingredients, automatically the recipes will start following. Anytime you feel very, very hungry and it's just before meals or something, buttermilk comes really handy. So I feel buttermilk should be one of the best friends as far as you can tolerate. Eating anything khatta, drinking buttermilk, having curd, will that cause any problem during pregnancy? Will that give me cold? No. As far as you have it in the room temperature, they're a very healthy option and they should not be ruled out from your meal options, right? So with these things, you can simply create a day where you are eating every 2 to 3 hourly. You're not ending up eating just 3 times a day, waking up, eating after 2 hours, and then just the lunch and thus the dinner. These are the people who commonly end up with pregnancy-induced diabetes, right? Again, because we feel hungry, this means only if you're going to indulge too much into the portion of the meal size. Again, that's one more reason where insulin sugar imbalance comes in, right? So make sure you all eat every 2 to 3 hourly. Make sure your food has colors in it. Third thing is it should have protein in it and a small portion of carbs and a little bit of fats in it, right? Is that simple enough for all of you to follow how you can create your nutritional chart, right? Now, one more very important thing that I would want to share with all of you is nutritional check. Now, after doing all of this, you all need to do a self-nutritional check every 1 month. Okay, what do you do in this? You stand in front of the mirror and you see, is my eyes baggy? Are my nails breaking off very easily? Do I have cravings of eating a chalk or, eating mud? This nail breaking, eating chalk, mud cravings are typical signs of low calcium and vitamin D3 in your body. You need to work on it. Tell your doctor and they'll help you out. If you feel your skin has become very pale, now this is very commonly called as pregnancy glow. Pregnancy glow should be red and not pale. It should not be fluffy and should not be all swollen. If that's the case, again, very low protein in the body, and second is low hemoglobin in the body. Seek help. Even protein powders are absolutely okay to be, it's okay to have protein powders if you're not able to get it through your nutrition depending on your weight. Just ask your doctor for recommendations and they'll help you out. If you need, we can also help you with recommendations. Next is falling hair. Falling hair is very, very rare during pregnancy. It happens after pregnancy. During pregnancy, hair fall just stops. And still, if you have hair fall, it's again a sign that your body has very low protein in the body. And when the body has such low amount of protein, it starts taking away a lot from your muscles as well because it has to sustain the base nutrition of the body. And that's the time again you feel very lethargic, body becomes very painful. Aches and pains that we get to see in pregnancy, they are seen more renowned during pregnancy if the nutritional checks is not done, right? So this is one thing as the homework for all of you that I want to do with yourself every monthly, right? So if you all do this simple things, it will be automatically easy to manage your nutrition, right? So we will take questions regarding nutrition at the end of the session, right? But before that, we will go to another important aspect of our pregnancy, which is labor management. Now, labor is like, I feel it's the longest topic in the whole ANC, okay? But there are a few things, which I would always want all of my pregnant ladies to know. This is which I'm planning to share with you all today, right? The most important thing that I would want to share with all of you today is, first thing that I would want to share is, what is labor, right? Labor is, we all know that it's a process through through which our baby comes out through our uterus, right? We all know that. So if we all have not gone through, see, this is a simple picture which will explain to you all. So this, if you see this lining around here, is the uterus. This is the mouth of your uterus, which is called as cervix. And this down here is your vagina. So very commonly, when we talk about cervix, we end up confusing it with the vaginal outlet. So the outlet which we can see, when we bend down, that's the vaginal outlet. It's not your baby mouth opening outlet, okay? Your baby's mouth opening outlet or your uterus outlet is right inside. So when you put two fingers inside, you reach deep in, you will reach actually till the cervix. So if you see, the whole process of your labor is based on the outlet of the uterus. Now, if you look at this picture, can you all see that this outlet is so beautifully closed? It's like a lip sort of thing, thick, nicely plumped up, closed. And if you can see, there is a small white plug in between, which is nicely closing the whole mouth of the uterus, keeping the baby very safe, secured, away from all the external environment infections. So very commonly, people end up asking me, oh, I've got constipation, diarrhea, I got urinary tract infection, or if we indulge into a sexual intercourse, will my baby also feel it? Will my baby also get infections? And so no, nothing happens to the baby. Your baby doesn't feel it, it doesn't get any infection, is because that this mouth is so beautifully and tightly closed, securing the baby so nicely that nothing reaches to your baby, right? Apart from that, inside, so once this mouth is the close, but if you go inside, there is one more sac which is called as amniotic sac. Inside this amniotic sac, there is amniotic water, and inside that amniotic sac and water is your baby. So we can assume there is a small swimming pool for your baby inside, which is closed intact like a balloon, and on that your baby is secured. So no way anything happening at this junction is going to cause anything to your baby, right? So the labor procedure or the labor itself has major aspect with this particular closure. Now what I want you all to imagine is, imagine that this cervix is like a rubber band. We all have seen rubber band, right? Imagine you have thick rubber bands, 3 or 4, and you make a knot of it, right? That knot is nicely and tightly closed. Now the whole process of being from closed to slowly thinning out to 10 centimeters open is actually considered as your first stage of labor. So, in fact, this is the only stage that designs that how will be your experience of your labor. I'm pretty sure when we talk about labor, more than the baby coming out or more than the process of it, all that hits our head is pain. So if we might have been talking, I would have asked you that if I say labor, what comes in your head? And everyone says pain. No one really says that baby or the experience of it or the happiness of it, because it's always been demonstrated, it's always been shown. It's not been shown as a process of strength, it's not been shown as something which is really very natural. It's always been depicted in very weird ways, and particularly Bollywood movies have gone leaps beyond to show horrifying scenes out of it, which is, best part of it is not true. Okay, such things don't happen in the labor room. Okay, so the whole process of labor is closed mouth to slowly opening up, thinning out to 10 centimeters is the whole first stage of your labor. Once your baby, once the mouth is thinned out, then the head starts popping out. So you all remember that movie 3 Idiots? They were asking crowning. So crowning is where you can start seeing your baby at this tip. So basically this is your pelvis, okay, the tailbone, the hip bones and the pubic bones. This is something that fits in like this. Okay, so if your baby is here and the head is going out and you can see around here nicely crowned, you can see the head of the baby is called as crowning. This is the second phase of the labor where baby crowns and comes out. The third stage of labor is that slowly once the baby is out, even this area, can you see this? This is the placenta of the baby. The area through which the baby gets its nutrition, right? Even slowly that also detaches and comes out. The fourth stage of labor is that once the baby and the placenta and everything is out, if need be, suturing is done and they bring you back to your room, right? So this is the simple procedure of the labor. Now the thing is that do we really realize all this technical part of it? The answer is no. We realize only 2 major aspects of it. One is first stage and second is second stage. The first stage is the one where you are constantly with your labor partner or you are with your husband. This is the stage where you spend maximum of it in the, not in the labor room, but completely outside. Out of which again 40 to 50% you might end up spending at your own home, and last 50% you might be spending it in the hospital. So this is the one phase where you can work, where you can work on how your labor outcomes can be, where your labor partner can help you out or your husband can help you out to soothe and do comfort measures so that you feel better in this phase. Right. Now I told you all right that your labor procedure, as I said, your labor contractions as people show in movies, horrifying, screaming, ouch, ouch. Is it really like that? So no, it is not like that. It is a very intermittent procedure. So when people say, oh, my labor went for 20 hours. So 20 hours may not all the time they are in pain. Okay. It is usually when the labor is longer. So usually for the first time hours, the labor is a little longer. But if the labor goes long, then there are good amount of breaks which are associated. So first we will understand why do we feel pain during labor. So we don't feel pain during labor because such big baby is coming out. This is the most common reason people say, "इतना बड़ा बच्चा आएगा तो दर्द तो होगा." But that is not the reason. The reason for pain is your muscles are very flexible. They will open up and they'll give the baby out. That is not the concern. The thing we get pain because that if you look at, I would want you to see this picture. Okay, so this is your uterus. If you look at your uterus now, it is made up of vertical and horizontal muscles. They all form like a mesh-like grid. So we all have seen this jali in our house, which prevents mosquito from coming in. That's a similar kind of mesh-like pattern that forms inside your uterus muscles. Now, through this opening, small openings, the blood vessel supplies blood to your uterus. Now, for your uterus, in order to be from closed to nice opened up, what it does is it slowly contracts. Now, every time it contracts, this all grids close. When they close, temporary blood supply to the uterus stops, and that's the reason we experience pain. As soon as this relaxes, again the blood supply starts and the pain goes away. So initially, this contraction is very slow and small. So that's why the pain timing is very brief. You feel pains for 15 seconds, 30 seconds, and then they go away and they come back after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, depending on which stage of labor you are. Sometimes, they just come for 45 seconds and again they go away and they come back after 10 minutes. So initial phase of your first stage of labor is majorly with big breaks. Gradually, as in how the uterus gains more and more stronger contractions, this length of this contraction starts increasing in time. So from 15 to 45 seconds, they somewhere go anywhere between 30 to 1 minute, 30 seconds to 1 minute or 1.5 minute. And gradually again they come back after a little bit, closer interval. So the best part of your labor pains are that they are not continuous. They come and go. How do they come and go? They initially come with small intensity and small frequency, big gaps, and gradually they start increasing in intensity and in frequency. So initially there are less time, small ones coming after a long interval. As you progress, they start coming in shorter intervals and a little stronger ones. That's the best time when it gives your body also time to accommodate. Right? Before we talk anything beyond this, there is one secret that I would want to tell all of you, right? That this everything is a natural process and your body knows how to do it, right? I think this is the most important part we end up missing when we start talking about labor. As soon as we were born, did anyone teach us how to breathe? We did it automatically, right? Just a newborn baby knows how to breathe, knows how to pass urine, knows how to pass toilet, knows how to scream and cry, everything that we know. Same way for a female body, giving birth to a child is absolutely similar natural process as it is for the rest of the body processes that we do, right? It does not need to be taught. It cannot be, explained. It cannot be guided. It has to be, it's an inert process. And the most important or the best way, to come through it with a happy and a satisfactory experience is to believe that you already know how to do it because you know how to do it. No one needs to teach you that. Second thing is to believe that it's a natural process. It's not much of an interventional process. Your doctor is there to help you for something that might need help. That's the reason we have doctor. We don't have doctor because he has to do something with it. Third and the most important thing is that you need to listen to your inner voice. because no one knows better than the mother that what is happening within her. But you need to give yourself, and your partner or your labor partner needs to give yourself that environment where you have been heard. And for to be heard, first you have to listen to your own self, right? So whatever we are talking today is just for the sake of that how you can prepare your body for labor. Labor is going to be smooth, natural. Second reason why we are talking about today is that what can you do or your partner do at that point in time to smooth that procedure for you. These are the only two helps we can provide, right? The third one is you are absolutely capable and you already know how best it can be done, right? So, as I said, that body gets its own time to accommodate because it slowly begins and then gradually picks up. Now, in this, what can I do? I know that this whole thing will happen. Is there anything that I can do? So yes, there are two things that you can do. First thing is to prepare your body before the labor comes. So there are two ways that you can prepare. So what are the major concerns of our labor? One, that we want it to be painless, right? We cannot say pain-free. We want it to be painless. Second thing we want is that our labor should be short. It should not be very long. We should not drain and tap out of it. So is there anything we can do to prepare our body? So yes. Now in order to know what you can do to prepare your body, we will first talk about our labor muscle. So you all remember at the start of the session I told you that I'm a pelvic floor rehab specialist. So we'll understand what is a pelvic floor. So a pelvic floor in a layman term which I have given is a labor muscle. Now where is that muscle? So we'll again come back to our pelvis. Okay, you all remember I told you fits in here. This is the tailbone which goes behind, the hip bones and the pubic bone that comes just at the punchy line, right? Now this whole structure is called as pelvis. Now for this pelvis, if you look down, this muscle is like a flooring. Like we all are sitting in our house, right? And there is a flooring down, it's holding us up. That's why we call it as flooring. Same with this is the pelvis ka flooring. That's why we call it as pelvic floor muscle. Why muscle? Because it's a muscle. Now, for what is it a flooring? So, it's flooring for three main organs. If you look over here, you'll be able to see this is your bladder, the urine bag, uterus in which your baby is there, or garbhashay, and third is behind, it's the part of your intestines that goes in. Now, all of these three organs sit nicely on this pelvic floor muscle. And they all three have their opening through this pelvic floor muscle. So, if you will look from down, this is the urinary outlet. This is the vaginal outlet through which your baby comes out, and this is the anal outlet through which your toilet comes out. Now, this muscle is just like your back, bicep, tricep. Now, you'll say, how? It's like your back, bicep, tricep because it works as per your will. You decide, I want to pick up a pen and write or not. I want to, pick up a bottle and drink or not. It does not automatically happen. Same way, you decide you want to pass urine or not. You want to pass toilet or not. It just does not automatically happen, right? It's under your control. Only thing which is not under our control is when the baby will come out. Apart from that, all the functions in this area are under our control, right? Now, because this muscle is under our control, it also means that we can train this muscle, right? You can train your bicep, tricep, knee muscles, arm muscles. We all go to gym, pump it up. We all do that, right? The same way, if this is a muscle which is under my control, I will be able to train it. It is not an automatic muscle. What are automatic muscles? They are smooth muscles. So, for example, I take food, I eat it. The food goes from my mouth to my food pipe, to my stomach, to my intestines automatically. Do they ask us, okay, come on, now let's go to stomach. Now can I go to intestines or not? It just happens. So that way, your urine and toilet just does not happen, right? It works as per your will. So automatic muscles are different and your skeletal muscles are different. Luckily, your labor muscle is a skeletal muscle. So we can train it. Now, how do we train it? Okay, so as I said, there are two aspects of it. One is pain and second is duration of the labor. We'll first talk about pain. You all might have tried at least once. If maybe not you, then someone around you might have tried at least once. Going to gym first time in life, right? You go to the gym first time and you see other people all doing abs and squats and you get so empowered and you start doing. Day one. Okay, you see a friend beside you taking some barbell on his shoulder and going up and down with 30 kgs and you say, let me just start without weights. And you do some 10-20 squats. You go home and next day you're not able to get up. You know, I did so much of workout, I move it pains, I stand up it pains, I do anything it pains. And this guy who was taking your friend who was taking their barbells on his shoulder and doing all squats, he's all ready next day again to go to gym. So what is the difference between your friend and you? It is purely about training, right? His muscles are trained, and for ours it was first time. So same way for your pelvic floor muscle, your labor is going to be first time. And so that it takes it nicely without being sore and very painful and resisting it, it's better that it is strong, right? The stronger it is, the lesser pain it will perceive. Second thing is that this muscle needs to even stretch nicely. It needs to relax nicely. Now, only the stronger muscles will relax nicely. We all have commonly seen people, there are few people, wake up and say, oh, my neck got stuck. Oh, my back got stuck. Now, this again and again, neck and back getting stuck is not because of any other reason, but because the muscles are weak. Your body will always tighten up the muscle because that's the only way it can support when it is weak. So we don't want our muscles to tighten. We want our muscles to relax, and it will only relax when it is strong. So if you work on the strength of it, the pain perceived would be less. It will stretch better and it will facilitate. It will help the process of labor rather than resisting it, making the labor process smooth, right? Second thing is the duration of it, the timing of it. Now, timing of it depends again a lot on its strength. Now, let's take an example of a trampoline. Do you all know what a trampoline is? So, trampoline is this black circular structure where you see, kids jumping. I have only one weird movie example, if you all can relate, is Hamra's movie, where that guy is jumping and that guy kills from down. So, the structure on which that guy is jumping is a trampoline. Or you go to any malls and you see kids jumping with that net around a black round thing is a trampoline. Okay, for the ones who don't know about it. Now, the most specific thing about a trampoline is that you jump wherever you want on the trampoline. It comes back to the center. That's the best thing about it. It has its elasticity, it has everything. But one peculiar thing about it is you never fall out. The net also that is kept for the kids is just for the safety that they don't push and fall. But they will not fall because of jumping. Okay, so you'll observe once you take your kids for a play after a few years, right? Remember me at that time. So in trampoline, wherever you jump, you come back to the center. Now imagine that your baby's head has to come to its starting position by jumping on this pelvic floor muscle ka trampoline. Baby also have starting position to deliver. Yes, all babies have to come to a particular position, starting position before they can come out. That's the reason the miracle of birth is that you never see a baby being born in different positions. You always see baby being born in same position. The baby's nose is touching the tailbone, baby's head is touching the pelvic bone, head down, out, one shoulder out, other shoulder out, and the baby is out. It never happens you see first hand or you see first eyes. Never happens, right? So this is because the baby comes into a starting position. Now your baby has to come into the starting position and baby starts hitting. So this hitting you actually start feeling by 36, 37 weeks. You will feel, now I don't feel hits up here, I feel hits down. The baby is already into the preparatory jumps that I need to come into my starting position. Now imagine that this muscle is very weak, poorly made trampoline. The baby is hitting, but not going in the center. If the muscle is really strong, the baby hits, it gets a nice rebound and it comes into the center. So if you want to work on the duration or the length of your labor, you really need a strong pelvic floor muscle. So pain, duration, facilitation, all of these three aspects can be taken care when the muscle is strong. Now comes the most important question. How do I do that? So I'm going to teach you all one exercise for that, okay? For this, I want all of you to close your eyes. Breathe in with your nose, blow out with your mouth. Okay, now imagine is in red bold, huh? Imagine that you all are passing urine. And if you want to stop the flow of it, what muscle are you all going to squeeze? Is your exercise. So basically, this area is the one that you end up squeezing. Okay, we'll try it once again. Close your eyes. Imagine that you're passing urine. Now try to stop the flow of it in between. Squeeze your lower muscles and then relax. Now when you're doing this, there are common mistakes that ends up happening. The first one is that we end up squeezing our thighs, buttock or abdomen. This is something that we need to avoid. Because if you start using that, this deep muscle will be left out of the picture. Second thing is we end up holding a breath to do that. Again, in this case also your pelvic floor is not working. Okay. So how do I assure that my pelvic floor exercise that I'm doing, Kegels exercise it's called as, is right or wrong? So this is only to try once to understand. Don't do it every day. A simple method to do is when you go to the washroom, when you're actually passing urine, try to stop the flow of it, and you'll understand the exact way to do the exercise. Right? You never do this exercise while passing urine. Why? Because you need to do this exercise 100 times a day. Now you go to urine 10 times a day. Every time you will start squeezing, your bladder will start retaining urine and it might end up giving you a urinary tract infection. So we don't want that. We don't want clearing difficulties. So please do it only once or twice to understand it. Once you have understood it, just do it without anything. Okay. Simple way to do that 100 times a day is to club it with any activity. So my favorite activity is that every time you go to the washroom, we all go at least 10 times thanks to pregnancy. And I think washroom is a boon, rather than a curse. A lot of people say, oh, I have to get up at night. But there's so many benefits to it. First one is that you get to eat so that you're not nauseous. Right? Second thing is so many times you go in the day, you can do your exercise. So every time you go to the washroom, whatever you've been there to do that, finish that business first. Okay, sit on it once you're done with it. And then just sitting over there, quickly do your 10 repetition and then come up. If you're going to washroom 8 to 10 times a day, your 80 to 100 repetitions are done. Right? So this is your first stage of your Kegels exercise. There are multiple stages to it. Okay. If you all are able to do 80 to 100 repetitions in coming future in within a week or 10 days or maybe 15 days, then I will share my number at the end of it. Call me and I'll teach you stage 2 of it. Stage 2 is important. Kindly don't bypass it. It brings imbalance otherwise. So quickly start working on it. It's very easy. Every time you just go to the washroom, finish what you have been to do, just do 10 squeezes and then come out. And then learn stage 2 and then do it throughout your pregnancy. Right? So if you are able to do just this simple exercise, you can work on the pain, facilitation and duration of your labor. Right? So this is what you can do pre your labor. What can I do post my labor? So post labor comes or during labor. So during labor comes labor partner training, where we train the partner that what he or she can do. In most labor's husband. It's only in very rare situation that if you're traveling or something, or you're your moms or something, then I'm saying she. We ask them to do few things with you, which are all natural methods. Most of the time, they are labor massages, the breathing exercises, they are focus-based trainings. Very rarely we use, few modalities or pens. It's called as it's just placed on the back like this. Okay, this also does labor partner's job without tiring out the labor partner. There are simple positioning that is done during the labor. So method and positions in which you sit in order to be comfortable during your process. And most importantly, making you empowered and, full of information when it comes to decision making is something that we do, we train during the labor. Now, this thing is like really vast, but these are the things that can be done. And this makes your procedure really, really simple. It does not make it very, the most common way when we reach to labor is like, oh, we don't know what's happening. We don't know the room. We don't know the staff. We have not spoken to our doctor regarding it. Everything just comes as a surprise. So, what we intend to do is, we all have been to our board exams, right? Now, if you have prepared for your board exams nicely, your teacher has already told you, bring this types of pen, this types of this, bring that, bring this, bring the water bottle, reach 30 minutes before, acclimatize, meet the staff. This is the hall. Go and see your hall one day prior. Everything you have done and you go for your exam. You are so much at peace. Only thing you have to do is write your exam and nothing is coming to you as a surprise. At the same place, you missed your orientation in the school. Okay. And you just reached 5 minutes before your exam and you realize, oh, I have to bring this pen. Oh, I have to bring this graph paper. Oh, I have to do this. Oh, this is the teacher. Oh, where is my room and where is my class? What will happen? It just creates unnecessary anxiety, right? And then we forget how much ever you have studied your exam, you're going to be like all messed up and it'll take half an hour to just acclimatize before you write your paper. So the labor training actually comprises is giving you the paper before you write the exam. We even tell you the paper also. Okay, so labor training is something where you actually train for natural birthing. This is something that can be done by you and your partner. Rest everything has been taken care by the doctor, where we don't do anything. The baby, again, your baby is also self-sufficient. Rest even baby finds its way out and baby comes out, right? So the whole purpose of labor training is to make the whole journey very smooth and very simple sailing for all of you, right? again, it really works in bonding the partner's role as well for the birth. That era of it is gone where we say, why do we need partner for the birth? And now it's just the husband's presence. That itself is so comforting that the journey becomes very smooth. Even if you don't do any of this, but at least if your partner is with you, that itself is so empowering, and it gives you so much amount of peace and warmth and care at that phase that the whole process becomes really smooth. Right. So these are the few things that you all can do during your labor. Right. So with this, I think we can take our question and answers. Or before that, I think I would hand over to Shine, or who is someone who is taking over. So just give them another 5 minutes. They would like to talk. So today's session has been managed by CordLife for us, and we will just give them 5 minutes to share their idea about stem cells with you all. And they have some surprise for you all as well. So they will share that. And once that is done, we'll take question and answers, right? I hope you all have written down your question and answers to ask to me.
When is a parent born? When your world changes in a moment. Nani? Or when the moment is celebrated by all. When you start learning again. Or with a new role. Is it your child's first breath? Or is it just a feeling? Parents are born when they fulfill a responsibility.
Your child's umbilical cord blood can provide protection from 80 life-threatening diseases. Keep it safe with Asia's largest stem cell bank, CordLife. One chance, one choice.
And to all the lovely participants, we have a special gift voucher for you all, which is given out by CordLife in association with Mom's Joy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. As Ushma ma'am rightly pointed out about those pictures where you could see a rope-like structure, that's umbilical cord. And the detailed presentation about stem cell banking will be given in course of time. Someone from my team will get in touch with you, and they will ask for a convenient time and your choice of place. Probably if you want them to come out to your place or through the same channel we are using right now, we can deliver the presentation. Presentation will have detailed discussion about stem cell banking per se, what stem cells are, what are the benefits of banking, and the cost attached along with the services. So just to give you a gist, because I know, this is not the right platform to speak about stem cell banking in a stretch. I'll just give you a gist. So stem cells are body's master or mother cells, which has the capability to differentiate itself into different cell lines. Now imagine, so in course of your pregnancy, from 1st to 7th month or 1st to 9th month, there are a number of cells which come into being. And similarly, there are different types of stem cells, or there are different types of cells per se. There are 200 different types of cells. Some cells are reserved cells. They do not possess any quality as such. They are present inside your body also. But the maximum amount of stem cells are present in umbilical cord, and these are zero age. These are biologically zero age. What we do is, in ideal situation when you go into labor, again as pointed out by Ushma ma'am, the normal course of delivery is soon after your baby is born, your doctor will clamp the cord. He will detach the baby, or she will detach the baby from the cord. Baby will further go for bathing, washing, whatever it is. And this umbilical cord along with placenta will come out in course of 5-10 minutes, I think. And the entire thing is dumped. So it's a biomedical waste. What we are doing right now, so in case you choose to go ahead with stem cell banking, the process is same. The entire process will start once your baby is detached from the cord. So there's no harm to the baby, there's no harm to the mother. The collection or whatever we are collecting is actually a vestigial thing. So instead of one clamp, there'll be two clamps on both the sides, vaginal end and baby's end. The blood in between will be collected. Once we milk out the entire blood from the cord, what we do is we cut the umbilical cord as whole and we store both cord blood and cord tissue. Now, the detailed description about the quality of cord blood cells or stem cells and technical terms to it will be later discussed once we come or once we meet you in person. So that will be a more private session so that you can get answer to all your queries. For now, thank you so much. I'll leave the stage again. So after listening to Ushma ma'am, you get stuck. So I was so intrigued in the entire session. I was just preparing, in my head what to say after Ushma ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you, Vinay, for briefing us for Baby Cell, and thank you for the appreciation as well. And I would like to take all your questions. It would be via chat messages. So you all need to drop a message in the chat option where you all have it, and then we can take it up.
Ma'am, do you want me to read it out? Read the question out?
Yes, please. Yes, please. I think that would be a little easy.
Yes, ma'am. There is only one question till now. It is
Right.
how much jaggery can be consumed if you have mild gestational diabetes? I am not on medication, but I am not consuming sugar and fruits, which is helping me control my sugar levels.
Right. So, Kajal, if you are having a gestational diabetes and you are able to control it without medication, just with help of your nutrition, it depends how you are controlling it. So, if you are just able to control it by restricting the sugar intake, then obviously you cannot have it. But if you are able to manage it by working on your timings of eating or working on the composition of the food that you eat, then maybe somewhere we can fit in jaggery a little bit. So again, it's a very subjective question. I would really would want to know a little bit more about it before I answer. But if it's purely sugar restriction that's helping you, then you can't have it. But if you're working with the proper nutritional guidance with your nutritionist, then definitely she can fit in a little bit here and there. Is that okay, Kajal? Next question. When can we start pelvic floor exercises? Okay, Ashwini has asked that question. Ashwini, a wonderful question. You can start pelvic floor exercises as soon as you know you're pregnant. You can do it till the time you deliver it. And you can start doing it very same day or very next day of your delivery, irrespective of you delivered normally or C-section. Exercises post-delivery at least should be done for first 6 months, so that we don't end up with any kind of pelvic floor problems which are very commonly seen in female at old age, which I rehabilitate, right? So what are they? Most common complication which we get is, coughing or sneezing. We end up leaking little urine. This is common during pregnancy, but it should go away eventually. A lot of people, females who end up with that problem after age of 40, 50, because they don't exercise Kegels postpartum. So post-delivery, make sure you all exercise it religiously. This is one exercise every female should do throughout their life. Even if the doctor has asked you bed rest, you can do pelvic floor exercise. There is no complication to it, right? Second problem, if you do not do it nicely, again at old ages, as I said, these three organs are nicely placed. They also start becoming a little loose. So constipation, you start feeling something coming out from here. This all are complications, very, very common and very, very rarely talked about in India, and can be easily managed just by exercises. So for us at this phase, it's a preventive method, but even in your home, if anyone is suffering with it, you can easily give them this exercise and they'll be better. If not, then they can contact a pelvic floor rehab specialist and they can help them out. Right? So wonderful question. Throughout your life, you need to do it, and you can start anytime you want it. One more question. Okay. And what are the other pelvic floor exercises? Okay. So pelvic floor exercise is only one. Okay. Then there are stages. So there are methods of loading it. Currently, what you all are doing is you are working. So basically, this whole area is divided into two parts. This is the first half and the second half. So exercise that I've given you all today is for the first half. If you are able to do it nicely, 80 to 100 repetitions, I will teach you all the second half as well. And eventually, we just load it up. There is no, it's not like, leg training where we do squats and lunges and this and that. There are not such variation, but there are methods of loading it up. But during pregnancy, the methods of loading it up are also just holds. We just start doing it with holds, or we start doing it with ascending patterns and all. But there are no different forms to it. Right? Any other questions? I hope you all know where you're supposed to drop questions. So there is a bar on the side, rectangular one, and the gray color, lines you can see where it's written sharing, dashboards, webcam, and then there's an option called questions. And that questions is the place where you all drop in your question. If you will touch over there, there'll be a drop bar where it will say type answers.
Ma'am, I have shared the feedback form in the chat box. Can you address the audience about it?
Sure. So if you all go down, there is another option of poll and chat. I want you to click on that chat option, and there is one small feedback form which has been shared with all of you. I would be really grateful to all of you if you all can fill that up, because that will always give us feedback about what better can we do for all of you. And the suggestions you can also mention if there is anything specific you wanted out of this session. If you love the session, we would love to see your appreciation as well. And any constructive advice or suggestions that you would want to give, please do mention it in that form. That also has my contact details. Probably you will only be able to see it on laptop. I'm not sure you'll be able to see it on mobile or not. So we can just drop in my number. This is for the people who are going to call me for pelvic floor exercise, right? So I've already shared my number as well. Any doubts or any other questions? No doubts. It's not necessary to ask questions only from what I've spoken today. You can ask me literally anything that comes under the umbrella of pregnancy, childbirth, delivery, postpartum care. Anything, any question that has been troubling you all. I think Gayatri had mentioned that she's not able to hear. Can you hear that now, Gayatri? Yes, she's able to hear now. Others, any question? No questions? Seriously? Did I cover things so well? Okay, I think Suchitra has dropped a question. What should I eat when my estimated date of delivery is coming? Suchitra, I so far what I understand from your question is what you're asking is that what you can do for your labor preparation. Is that your question? Because your eating pattern just remains the same when your estimated delivery date is coming. Very good question if you're asking me for labor preparation. So there are a lot of different cultures in India, where they start altering the eating patterns at the end of the last month, where there are some cultures where they give a glass of milk with 1 or 2 spoons of ghee in it, thinking that the baby will slip out smoothly. Sometimes before going into labor also they end up giving one glass of milk and ghee in it and say go. So at times they start adding kesar into their diet regularly, or they start adding into heaty stuffs, that okay, the labor will go smooth and the labor will come in very fast. The truth is that labor is a very natural process. We all really don't know that what really triggers the labor process. The most understandable aspect to it is that when the stretch of the uterus reaches to its maximum, it sends a message to the brain that yes, this is the max I can take, and then the process of labor starts. You eating anything is not going to alter the outcome of your labor. Eating ghee, milk, heaty things. We'll first talk about ghee and milk and things that help slide a baby out. Nothing can help slide baby out, okay, because the food goes in the stomach and your baby is in uterus. Both the sacs are different. That fat that went in the stomach is never going to reach to the uterus. Yes, if you have weight gain issues, where you're gaining too much weight during pregnancy, or you started your pregnancy at already overweight, that ghee might add up to excessive fat in your body, which will create difficulty for your recovery post-delivery. So ideally giving any help out of it, it's actually going to cause trouble. Again, just before going to the hospital, having a glass full of milk and ghee is just going to give you a stomach distress. Already you are, uterus is already into contraction. There is hardly any space there. The intestines are, making space for each other, and we end up putting so much milk and ghee, which is so hard to digest. It takes around 6 to 8 hours for that to completely digest out. it just gives a lot of distress. And that's the reason that doctors have started giving enema before we reach there, right? Again, if by chance we have to go into C-section, that might even lead to regurg and coming up because we'll be given anesthesia. So it's not a great idea to indulge into a very heavy food before going into labor. It's good to have some light fruits or fruit juices or electron powder, or to have khichdi, or something that is very easily digestible. Preparatory, as I said, there is really nothing that can help. So I would not suggest that you should alter. Only one thing that you can alter is that you can start adding galactogogues. Now, this is one thing that really helps. What are galactogogues? Galactogogues are the food products that helps in breast milk production. So if you start including in your diet a month prior, your body is prepped up by the time the baby comes. So your bajri, nachni, your almonds, milk, garlic, ajwain, soft, your gond laddus, this all are very, very rich galactogogues, and you can include them in small proportion in your food. Garden cress seeds, flax seeds, you can include them small proportions in your food to prepare your body for breast milk production, but nothing for the labor, right? Is that okay, Suchitra? Yes, so Kajal has asked for diet for lactating mothers. So diet for lactating mother it's going to be quite similar than what we do during pregnancy. During pregnancy, we just want you to add around 300 to 400 calories extra. During lactation, we want you to add around 600 calories extra. So what is 600 calories extra? 2 rotis, 2 glass of milk and 2 laddus and 1 fruit extra is 600 calories. Okay, but we will definitely feel very hungry when we are feeding. It just feels as if that milk went from here and the stomach is all empty and it's burning. So it's always good to combine, as I said, to work on the nutritive aspect of your food. If you make your food with a lot of colors, which is obviously the natural vegetable and fruit colors that I'm talking about, and very high fiber and not simple white chawal and gehu, you will have better satiety and you will not end up overindulging, and it will be quite smooth enough. There is hardly any contraindication. There are a lot of things, again, in postpartum care, we cover this, that, myths related to what you can eat and what you cannot eat post-delivery. Actually, you can eat everything post-delivery, as far as your system is able to digest. Second thing is, as far as that you do not end up with any kind of infections. So there are no restrictions per se. Third thing is, always make sure that your galactogogues are included for first 2 months in your nutrition, because you need good amount of breast milk production. So you can't go ahead with just empty calories to put into your stomach, because that will not help you with your breast milk production. That's all you need to take care of. Rest it's your will. You can, again, the patterns remain same. All 3 components has to be taken care of, and you have to have your meals every 2 hourly and around 500 to 600 calories extra. Right. Ashwini has asked me exercises, groin area pain. So groin area pain is commonly pelvic girdle pain. Okay, that's because of that. If you look at this pelvis, now all your abdominal muscles that comes from the top, they come and they finish over here, and all your leg muscles, they start from here and they go down. Again, from the back side, all your back muscles go from the top, insert here, finish here. Again, your buttock muscle starts from here and goes down. Now, when we are pregnant, most commonly, this whole aspect changes. We are like this. We are like this. So your abdominal muscle is all loose, stretched. Your back muscle is all tight. That imbalance usually pulls this bone a little up and down. So can you see? This bone is not joined by bone. It's joined by a soft jelly-like material. So this goes a little up and down and ends up giving groin pain, particularly at night when you try to turn sides, or when you stand on one leg. The best prevention is not to kick. Please make sure you all don't kick. And the exercise most commonly done is to sit in the butterfly position. It's one of the best exercises you all can do. Third thing you can do is apply ice packs in that area, and that should help you soothe the pain. If it does not go away, then you can consult a physiotherapist who super specializes with women's health, and they can help you out with the pain. Right? Make sure those pains are not progressive. These pains usually are the way they are throughout the pregnancy, but if you realize they are progressing at a very faster rate, they end up reaching to a point where walking and everything also becomes painful during movements. So this is the time when you see your physiotherapist. You don't delay it. Okay, if it's just the way it is, you can follow the tips and it will soothe it out. Okay. Does castor oil helps in pushing during labor? It's asked by Dr. Anushri Bagade. No, so castor oil does not really help in pushing during the labor. The role of castor oil is usually, again, different it's different eras the things are used, but still castor oil is still used quite across the globe lately also. The purpose of castor oil is to be given before labor. So a point where you know that you have crossed your due date, or you know that your doctor is also waiting, and has been 41 weeks, or whatever maximum we can wait as per the child's health, and we know that the labor is not starting. In this situation, usually doctor recommends 30 ml of castor oil with milk or something as per whatever doctor feels appropriate for you. Is to be you have supposed to have it a day before, so at night, and that leads to loose motions. So what happens is, because your uterus and your intestines are so close to each other, if your intestines ends up into loose motion, there is a hyperactivity over there and it starts hitting the uterus. And they all share a common nerves, so it starts irritating the uterus, giving it a message, knock knock, it's time to go. So it just helps in facilitating to set in the labor. Not always again, but yes, maximum of the time it does help, but in no way it helps in pushing the baby during the labor. As I said, any amount of oil or ghee you consume is going to go to your stomach, from stomach going to be absorbed, and it starts going and gets stored in your body everywhere. But at no point it's going to go into the uterus and starts lubricating it. That does not really happen. Right? Is that okay? You're welcome, Suchitra. Nidhi Modi has asked me a question. Can I deliver twins normally, or it's always C-section? Okay, Nidhi. Now this is a very subjective question, right? Yes, you can deliver twins normally, but it depends on a lot of things. The first thing is that your fitness, your child's fitness, what stage of, what week of pregnancy are you reaching into the labor? And, apart from that, if there is any associated complication, then that is to be taken care of. But nothing is a part of a problem. So you are fit, babies are growing well, you are slowly reaching to 36, 37, 38 weeks. And yes, people reach. So I had one of my patients who delivered at 38.3 weeks, twins normally. Normally, twins don't finish only 38.3 weeks, okay? And one child she delivered was 2.5 kg, the other one she delivered, 2.6 kg, the other one she delivered was around 2.9 kg, which is good weight for twins, to be delivered normally. So yes, it does happen. So if everything is just fine, is it that twins an absolute C-section? Not really. In that case, you can always talk to your doctor more in details about it, that what are the options, what can we do. So there are some risks also involved with it, they will explain to you, and then you can work that out, right? So overall, your fitness and child fitness is the basis on which doctor decides. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So I think we can just wait for another 2 minutes. We'll take last 1 or 2 questions, and then I think we can, sum up for the day. By the time, if you all have any questions, you can drop in. Well, it was wonderful talking to all of you. I hope I have helped you with all your questions and doubts. And I hope I've given you a few takeaways. They're very small, simple things that I had tried to sort it down for you all today. And at any point you get stuck or anything, you are free to contact me. Let me know if you need any help. Start with your Kegels. And I wish all of you a healthy and satisfactory and a happy birthing experience, right? So I hope you enjoy this phase of pregnancy, labor and childbirth. All the best for your phases. Okay, I don't think there are any questions. Okay, so it was wonderful seeing you all, and I hope we all meet up again, right? Take care. Bye-bye. Do fill up the feedback form, please. That will really help us to make our sessions better and more informative for all of you, right? Take care.
When is a parent born? When your world changes in a moment. Nani? Or when the moment is celebrated by all. When you start learning again. Or with a new role. Is it your child's first breath? Or is it just a feeling? Parents are born when they fulfill a responsibility.
Your child's umbilical cord blood can provide protection from 80 life-threatening diseases. Keep it safe with Asia's largest stem cell bank. Cord Life. One chance, one choice.